Greetings and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting of September 2nd, 2008. Would you please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are a couple of announcements this morning and alterations to our agenda. We do have an addendum. It would be item 8A, discussion and possible board direction to staff regarding appeal from Planning Commission Resolution number 2008-043, Dorian Fott, Murphy's Hotel, County Council Board action. So we'll be discussing that as item 8A. We also have a cancellation of item 10. This is the closed session that was scheduled today. That case has been dismissed, and that means the discussion of it will not be necessary. In addition to that, we have on the consent calendar item number 3, which will be removed from consideration because the grant proposal is not completed, and today is the deadline, so that we will not be considering a letter of support for that, and that will be postponed indefinitely. It may hit the next round of applications for the Sierra Conservancy, but it cannot make this particular deadline. So that item is removed. Do I hear a motion on the balance of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Just a second. I would like to pull something. Item 5, county fees. I'm going to be voting for it, but I don't think that should be on the consent agenda.
Okay. That's removed.
I think that should be on the regular agenda.
Anybody else wish to remove any item from the consent calendar? Audience, staff? All right, so we have eliminated number 3. We have removed number 5. Do I hear a motion on the balance?
I'll move on the balance. Second.
So motion and second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 5-0 vote. Now we will move to the resolution on additions, deletions, and changes to county fees. Supervisor Tryon.
We had a study session on this, and this is being brought back per board direction for action. I merely pulled it because I think when we increase fees, particularly substantially like this, I think it should be on the regular agenda just as a matter of policy. So I don't have. I supported it, bringing it back in its current form in the study session, so I'll move its adoption, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there's a motion and a question.
If my understanding is correct, on 277 for photocopies, it would be for 4 copies or more, that the first 3 were free. Was that the understanding of the board, or the first 2 were free? I thought it was the first 3 were free.
It was my understanding that it was 3 or more, so if you requested 3, then you were charged at that point. But that was my understanding at the direction of the board.
That was not my understanding.
Okay.
So, no. That's okay. So it's up to the male members of the board to determine this decision between the distaff members of the county.
My hope is that this issue will not be considered as gender related, but we will we will hold the board. And let me ask: do we have, given the way this is coming before the board, do we have the ability to alter this?
Yes.
Just amend it.
All right. So we could amend this.
Resolution.
Is anybody? Well, let's just.
What's the question?
The question is whether whether the first 3 are free, or whether it's the first 2 copies on when anybody comes to any county department. This is universal through all county departments.
First 2 pages or first 2 documents?
Pages.
Pages. Okay, care of that.
So let's start with Supervisor Thomas.
Supervisor Callaway, how would you like for me to vote on this?
I understood
This would be a gender deferral for those who are not.
The first 3 3. 1, 2, 3 were free. And after that, it was 50 cents a page.
So 50 cents a page for 4 or more is what your recommendation was.
That's
Correct.
that
So I would
understanding.
change it to
From 3 to
4 copies or more.
That's the way I'd like to see it.
All right.
Sounds perfect to me.
I'm fine with it. That's fine. Okay.
See?
We have a
We're over
mixed,
the big obstacle of the day.
and we have a mixed gender response for that. It's a 5-0, and will be changed. That amendment, should we do that in a motion at this point?
I'll second Tom's.
I'll amend the motion accordingly.
All right, and second holds. So those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. 5-0. We will now take a 1-minute recess and then be open for public comment.
So how you been? I know what I really go get some These
Okay, it is now time to resume the board meeting and move to item number 8, public comments. These are hoped to be 5 minutes or less per person and no more than 15 minutes per topic. Is there anybody who wishes to address the Board of Supervisors under public comments? These are items, by the way, that are not on the agenda.
Morning, members of the board. Tyler Somerset, Council of Governments. In Mr. McSorley's absence, he asked for me to give a quick update on SB 375. That's a bill going through the Senate right now, dubbed the Climate Change Smart Growth Bill. And comment on that has been heard in the chambers previously. This bill will only apply to the 17 MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and so it won't apply to rural counties like our own. And essentially, it calls for the creation of a preferred growth scenario, dubbed blueprint planning by Caltrans right now, and they are giving funds for regions to create blueprints. We haven't currently embarked on that, and so that would reside in an MPO's regional transportation plan. The other item I wanted to bring to your attention is the Pool Station Road project along Highway 4, safety project that Caltrans will be undertaking. They've already done environmental. That is scheduled to be released for bid next summer, 2009, for construction to start in 2010. And Mr. Thomas, the oak tree that you were concerned with is going to be part of the oak tree mitigation plan for Caltrans for that area. And so at this time, there's no plans on removing the large oak tree as you're heading east towards Angels Camp.
Okay, you have no objection to me going to Caltrans and see if I can lobby for an earlier removal? There were additional skid marks there that occurred over the weekend, so it's a nonsensical situation. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Darrell Rusk. I live 101 Melcher Lane, Valley Springs, Burson, 95252. And I was going to say I'll be short, but I can't help it. I am short. But regarding the oak trees, I was never going to stand up. Regarding the oak tree article that I read in the Stockton Record this morning about the California Oaks Foundation, and there was an indication that the county is working on a plan, and I just wanted to say that I'm sure that others, I know myself, would be happy to be of any assistance that we can in that process. I know that the departments involved are already pretty well burdened, so maybe some citizen input and some help would ease their load a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to step forward under public comment? Yes, you could have taken that off the agenda, but you're welcome to speak on it, I think. Just come forward, and I know that it's an important issue and very, very much timely and pertinent to today's health issues.
Yes, number 4 was prostate cancer awareness, and September has been nominated as...
Wait. You need to identify yourself before commencing.
Oh, okay. My name is Karen Crabtree, and I live in Amador County, but I'm going to different counties to the Board of Supervisors, asking them to declare a proclamation or a resolution that September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And do you need my address and phone number?
No, not necessary.
Fine. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about prostate cancer and how important it is. Prostate cancer is the second most diagnosed cancer, and skin cancer is first. 1 in 6 men will develop prostate cancer in their lifetime. Prostate cancer deaths are 9% higher than death from breast cancer. 5-year survival rate for prostate cancer is 100% if treated early. And if it's not treated early, then it goes down to 32% if it is spread to your body and to other parts of your body. In 1998, my husband Earl was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which had already spread to his bones, and the doctors gave him 3 months to live. Today, he's still alive and fighting valiantly against this disease. And if prostate cancer runs in your family, you have more chance of your sons or other relatives of getting prostate cancer. Prostate cancer usually doesn't have symptoms in the early stages. And by the age 50, you should be going to your doctor and asking for them to take a simple blood test called a PSA. And this will determine whether or not you have cancer. And this should be done each year. And you probably will have to ask your doctor to have this test because a lot of them don't regularly do it. And then if you have prostate cancer history in your family, then you need to start those tests at age 40. If you would be diagnosed with cancer, first thing you need to do is find the best doctor. And the second is to get a second opinion. And there is a wonderful organization in San Francisco called the Second Opinion. And it is totally free. And what you do is you go to San Francisco and one doctor interviews you and reviews your medical records. And then after they do that, then a panel of doctors of 5 or 6 of different medical fields will review your case, and then they will give you a written opinion as to what treatment you should have. And like I said, it's totally free. The phone number is 415-775-9956. So it's a wonderful thing for so many times people don't get a second opinion because of the cost and such. The other thing that you should do if you're diagnosed is to be sure and educate yourself. And the American Cancer Society has a program of one-on-one where you can call someone who has had cancer or still has it, and they can answer a lot of your questions. Another excellent thing to do is to go to support groups. There's a great support group in Sacramento. We have one in Jackson that meets at the hospital on the second Tuesday of each month. The internet is another great source for information. And last but not least, don't give up. In the first 8 years of my husband's treatments, 3 doctors gave up on him, told him to go home and enjoy the rest of his life. And, of course, we didn't pay attention to that. We went and found another doctor, and so he's still here and still fighting. And so we want you to be sure and get your PSA tests.
Thank you very much. I know this is something that's affected a lot of families in Calaveras County, including ones represented up here on this dais. So we're more aware from your presentation, and I do thank you.
Thank you.
Any other people wish to speak under public comment? Well, in that case, we are headed for a 10-minute recess, at which point we will... Yes? Oh, excuse me, I apologize. We have item 8A, which we can consider at this point, which is the discussion and possible board direction to staff regarding the appeal from the Planning Commission, the addendum that I had previously announced. I believe this starts with County Council.
Good morning. I placed this item on the agenda at the instruction of the board last week. The cover memo that is self-explanatory. It involves a decision by the Planning Commission regarding a signage for the Murphy's Hotel. I've made no particular recommendation. I think the appeal would be quasi-judicial in nature. It would depend on what the board finds.
Could I ask that members of the audience please maintain enough quiet so that everyone can hear what's going on up here? Thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
The hearing would depend on what the board finds to be the facts and application of the law. I think it would be inappropriate for me to make a recommendation on that. Last week I sent a letter to Mr. Vaught, who I see is in the audience, to tell him that this would be on the agenda today. I spoke with him, and both in the letter and in our conversation, I told him what I would say to you, that this is only a decision on whether or not the board wants to bring the matter up to review from the Planning Commission, and that it would be inappropriate for the board to discuss or really act on the merits of the appeal. So with that, I've submitted it for your consideration.
Let me ask you, I'm assuming there's a regular process for appeal, and that part of that has to do with notification of personnel. Is this within the 300-foot notification process, or is there another one that applies to a sign?
I don't think the 300-foot requirement applies, but there is a process spelled out in our county code which involves 15 days notice to various interested parties. So we would need to follow that procedure before the appeal itself can be heard.
Okay, and that has not occurred
That has not been
at this point. Okay, thank you very much.
The time for the appeal is not run, so it's appropriate that you decide this today, but we would have to comply with the notice requirements.
All right, and does staff have a recommendation on this?
I do not, no.
All right.
It came back at the direction of 3 board members.
Okay, this was in the last meeting.
I guess at my request.
All right, and do we have this board discussion on this? Would you like to?
Well, I just think it needs to come back, and the board needs to discuss it. I think it has a lot of policy implications if we're going to start allowing neon signs in the historical districts of our communities. I agree with I'll follow Jim's direction, and I don't want to get into the merits of it. I think hopefully there's still support to have the board review it, and I think at that point it's the time to discuss the merits of the appeal.
Okay, so on the narrow issue of whether or not to direct staff to bring forward an agenda item on this topic, what is the pleasure of the rest of the board?
I don't have a problem with having it brought forward as an appeal. Thank you, Bess. I think our board member does have that option. We should give the board member the courtesy of bringing the item forward. That's all that's before us today, is whether we should hear it as an appeal. And whether we hear it doing it this way or we hear it doing it an appeal through the normal process of appeal for the Planning Commission, it's still going to come to the board. So we're just talking about the mechanics of how it comes to the board. We're not talking about the issue today. But a question I do have for council is, since Supervisor Tryon is bringing this as an appeal to the board, would Supervisor Tryon be able to vote on this when it does come to the board?
How about today?
So as I said, the board hearing the appeal sits in a judicial capacity, not a legislative capacity. And I think the same rules would apply here as to a judge. I think that it would be inappropriate for the supervisor who presents the appeal to vote on it.
And that's when it comes to the board for review
That's
as
correct.
an appeal.
Yes.
And today, is there any issue on him voting on this today? To me,
There's no precedent. In my knowledge, there's no precedent for this particular situation. I would think that the same rule would apply as, again, a judicial rule, that the need to avoid any appearance of impropriety. No one's suggesting anything improper, but the appearance of impropriety, to me, would suggest that there be no participation in the voting on any issue related to this item.
So you're recommending recusal?
My recommendation would be that Supervisor Tryon recuse himself both today and on the appeal.
Okay. So, Marita, you're okay with proceeding?
yeah, because whether we do it today,
Wait a minute. Why are you saying today? Because this is to the board to hear it. I mean, lots of times board members have brought action from the Planning Commission to the board and have either heard it and or supported the Planning Commission and or heard it and changed the decision of the Planning Commission. And when it comes from the board as a whole, no board member has ever stepped down in the past for that, on that narrow point.
Has any board member ever been the actual appellant to a...
I'm not aware of the situation where a board member has been the appellant.
Well, in this case, the board itself is the appellant, not an individual board member, because that's why it's before the board.
Well, I can only repeat what I said. It's clear to me that when it comes time to decide the appeal, the appellant supervisor should not vote on that. I believe that to avoid the appearance of impropriety, it would be prudent to avoid voting even at this stage. That's my recommendation. That's my advice. I don't have any control over the decision beyond that.
Okay. Other supervisors wish to weigh in on the procedural question?
I mean, to me, this is just mechanical of how it's going to come to us. It's going to come to us one way or another. And since all the time has been...
Are you saying that regardless of what happens here today, it's going to come to the board anyway?
Only if Supervisor Tryon gets support today for bringing it back. If the way I understand it, if it results in a 2-2, it would be a dead issue, and Supervisor Tryon would have to file a formal appeal to bring it back to a hearing where he would not have the ability to vote, or it would not be prudent to have to take a vote or for him to participate in the vote.
Regardless of how it comes to you, that's the
how
case.
it comes to us. That's what it's saying.
Well, I want to get one thing clarified before we proceed further, which is that my understanding is from what is before us, and I was not privy to the discussion that happened in the last meeting, but my understanding is that what we're voting on is whether or not to schedule an appeal that is based on Supervisor Tryon's wish to appeal this. Supervisor Tryon has stated that this would be a Board of Supervisors appeal, and I see those as two different things, and each one probably, at least in relation to how I would relate to it, has a different outcome.
I don't have any first-hand knowledge as to the background. Last week, the board directed, on a poll, the board directed me to put this on the agenda. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a board-directed item.
All right, and if we were to vote in the positive, would this constitute a board appeal of the commission, or would it be a board decision to allow Supervisor Tryon to present an appeal at a date in the future?
It actually, the appeal is probably not the operative word. It would be the board directing that the matter be brought up from the Planning Commission so that the board can review the decision that was made at the Planning Commission. So it's a board-directed review of the Planning Commission's decision, and the board has that authority, as opposed to an appeal by an individual supervisor. The time to appeal is not run, so that can happen as well.
Well, and now I'm getting a little bit confused about the recusal question as Tom raised, because if it is a board action, then that's different.
What Jim is saying, I think, is since I appealed it to the Planning Commission from staff,
Right.
that he feels I should recuse myself. I don't think I should recuse myself from what's before us today to say the board should review the policy implications of what the Planning Commission did. To me, that's a different issue.
Right, we're having we are really discussing two very different things, and I'm trying to clarify exactly what it is we're voting on today.
Well, the fundamental question, you're talking about the mechanics about ends up in an appeal. The fundamental question I'm talking about is preserving the due process of the process, and that would entail having judges who have not expressed a bias, an opinion, to hear the matter, because it involves the determination of what the facts are, as well as an application of the law. So my recommendation is that to preserve due process rights of the applicant, that Supervisor Tryon not participate in deciding the appeal, regardless of whether the board calls it up or he brings it before you. Either way, I think that's clear cut.
Okay. Other comments from the board?
I'm still a little confused about something, and that is, Rita has said it's going to come to us ultimately anyway. So I guess my question is, should we vote in the negative on this today? Is it coming to the board anyway? I mean, she said ultimately it's going to come to the board regardless of what we do today. Is that correct?
It can come this way, or it can come through an appeal process.
That's correct. I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
You can have it reviewed.
But the time for an individual to appeal it is not yet run, so it might come to you that way.
Supervisor Thomas?
Back in the days when I was serving on a planning commission, there was always this test on whether or not you should be voting on a particular issue, was that can I truthfully say that I can maintain my objectivity? You know, can I vote on the merits of a particular item as presented on that day up to that last closing of the public hearing? I cannot imagine Supervisor Thomas voting today. I mean, if I had appealed this thing to the Planning Commission, we have a process in place that has been approved by the Planning Commission twice. Once, the second time, over the appeal of Supervisor Tryon. The fact that he is bringing it here today and wanting to vote on the proposal to bring it back to the Board of Supervisors is in and of itself an indication that he has a bias against the project. And I mean, it sounds like to me he's going to vote on it anyway, but I think that it is something that I would not do.
All right. Well, I guess I'll weigh in now. There really are several things going on here. One is that signs, lit signs, neon signs, we have apparently an ordinance that covers this right now. There's a set of rules, and a review of that seems to be one of the implications of Supervisor Tryon's initiative, and I welcome that. Looking at our policies from time to time makes sense. Separate and distinct from that is the question of, given what is in place right now, and given a timely proposal that was reviewed, I guess, for 17 months, whether we should spend board time on an appeal from that without a specific appeal before us. And I see these as two different things we're under consideration under one agenda item that speaks to only one of those two. So I'm a little bit in a quandary as to how to proceed. I would vote favorably to a review of our policies and take a look at our ordinance and try to decide what's in the best interest of the public here. It might be different in different towns, who knows? But that's a good discussion for us to have. As to whether we should schedule an appeal that is not exactly before us,
Not scheduling an
on
appeal,
this,
we're scheduling a review. There's a difference.
well, but the review, in my, this is only my personal opinion, but the review, if we're dealing with this particular sign in this particular place in relation to a particular decision of the Planning Commission, would have the same effect as an appeal. It would take something that would go back to, we might change policies in relation to our existing documents, but that couldn't have an effect on a project that's already gone through due process. That's the part that...
Let me ask Tom a question.
We're part of due process.
Tom, you said this is not an appeal, it's just a review.
When the board does it, it's a
Could you
review.
please, just a minute?
But we have something in
The
front of us.
minute order says appeal. An appeal means that we would either uphold, not uphold, or modify the Planning Commission decision when it comes to us. If it's just a review, it just gets to what Steve's saying. And you're saying forget the word appeal.
In the interest of accuracy, appeal is the terminology that I used in the paperwork that I prepared for today. Whether it's an appeal or a review is just terminology. The effect is exactly the same.
Okay.
The board will hear the case de novo, hear the facts, apply the law, and decide to uphold or not uphold the Planning Commission decision.
Okay.
So I would not argue that it's a review. It's a reasonable word to use. It's a review.
All right.
But the result, whether you call it an appeal or a review, is exactly the same.
So for me, it gets back to the exact same thing I said before. All we're talking about is a mechanism, and there's two mechanisms to bring it back to the board. The issue, not looking at what the code said, because we have to evaluate it based on what current code is, not on what we might want to change. We're going to look at it. It's going to come to us. We've already spent $27 discussing it right now. Let's just move it to have it come back to us at some point in time to follow the proper notification procedures. That's it. I don't care. And I don't have a problem with Supervisor Tryon voting on it today. I would have a concern having him vote on it when it comes before us for review. I mean, so today all before us is a mechanism to bring the project to the Board of Supervisors in whatever the timeliness manner is. It's going to come anyway, so let's just move on it without cutting more oak trees to make more paper. Oh, yes, we're going to do one on Full Station.
They don't make paper out of oak.
And that's it. And let Tom vote. I won't, and give him, or I'd give any supervisor, the courtesy of voting on this. Not necessarily voting when it comes before us. We can deal with that later.
On that subject, it seems clear to me that it would be inappropriate for him to vote on the appeal, participate in the vote on the appeal. I pointed out earlier, this is an unusual situation. I'm not aware of any precedent that applies to this sort of preliminary situation.
So, Counselor, are we saying the same thing? To have him vote on this, it's just bringing the item before us, but when the item's before us, Supervisor Tryon is not to vote on
I
it.
think ultimately that issue's up to him, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I would like to, at this point, to open this discussion up for any comment from the public, if there are people who wish to speak to it.
My name is Dorian Vaught. I'm the owner of the Murphy's Hotel.
Could you speak up, Dorian? Thank you.
My name is Dorian Vaught. I'm the owner of the Murphy's Hotel. Once again, I'm fascinated by the quagmire of government, and it brings to mind a movie about No Country for Old Men. You know, this is really an arduous task to try and do something that is allowed by ordinance, that is allowed by right, that is allowed by use. I have been sabotaged. I have been not given my ability for due process. I have followed every possible way to put up a sign that is the request of the planning department, the road department, the public works department, the building department. And I finally got permission after 17 months and paid my $94 fee to do this, and now I'm being appealed. The process is being appealed. There is nothing in this conforms to the sign ordinance. There's nothing that I'm asking for out of the ordinary. The comment will come up, I'm sure, that it's in the county right-of-way. Well, your code provides for people who have signs in the county right-of-way. It's called a legally existing non-conforming sign. And the use of that sign goes back for 100 years. The Murphy's Hotel is probably the oldest business in this county. To say that for me to replicate a sign that was put up in 1943, this is the sign that was put up in 1943, to say for me to replicate that sign is going to pass on the right to everybody in the county to put a neon sign in the county right-of-way is ridiculous. You guys have authority over that. I'm just trying to bring back a piece of history. I'm trying to make Murphy's the part of all of the different renaissances that have taken place there. It's not a gold rush town anymore. It is the most viable part of the community. It provides more sales tax per capita than any place else. The number one item for Calaveras County, the number one industry is tourism, and Murphy's is a pure example of that tourism. And this is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to bring in tourist dollars there. And I think what's good for the Murphy's Hotel is good for Murphy's the town, that's good for the Highway 4 corridor, that's good for Calaveras County. And I can't imagine that we are trying everything that we possibly can do to eliminate me putting up a historic sign. I would beg the board to deny this appeal, to deny bringing this around. If you want to change the sign ordinance, that's fine. That's entirely up to you. But under the current ordinance that you have, I think after 17 months I should be entitled to put my sign up.
Thank you.
Could I just remind the board what I said before? The appeal is timely. There is still time left to submit this appeal, and that this would not be the time to discuss the merits of that appeal, just whether the appeal will be going forward at the direction of the board.
So, I mean, the issue is not the things that Dorian was talking about. Because if it wasn't Tom Tryon, it could be someone else. Could have been Carol Gates that initiated an appeal. We would hear it.
The issue is not the project. The issue is whether this board
That's
wants to bring it
correct.
back.
It's not the project, Dorian, that's before us.
That's right.
Well, I will argue that. I think it is the project.
Well, on today's agenda, though,
On today's agenda, we're not discussing.
we're just trying to decide whether to bring it back for appeal.
I'm arguing the point that if you agree that I am following the law, I am within the ordinance, that you can deny this appeal process that's happening right now, and I could move forward.
Dorian, that's the whole purpose of an appeal process, of the Planning Commission when things come before us. We're not saying yes or no, or you followed all the codes, or everybody thinks that you should do it. Anybody has the right to appeal a Planning Commission decision. And that's, in this case, it happens to be yours.
I would have thought at some point that the Board of Supervisors were sitting here to make sure that people were playing on a level playing field, and that you were to enforce the ordinances. The ordinances are very clear. I'm not doing anything outside of the ordinance. I'm not appealing this. It's amazing that you're appealing your own ordinance.
Everyone has the right to appeal a decision of the Planning Commission. That is the process. Even though all your T's and I's might be crossed and dotted, that's what the process says. And all we're arguing about, should we go through that appeal process? It happens to be Tom Tryon who's doing it. It could be Carol Gates. It could be anyone that's appealing it. And we accept the appeal. They have the right to do that. Doesn't mean that we will or that we wouldn't uphold the Planning Commission decision, which then is we refer to the ordinances, what the community's saying, and so forth. What you're asking us to do is judge it now and deny the appeal.
No, that's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to adhere to your code and to adhere to the wishes of the Planning Commission.
But I don't know what the code is. I haven't.
I'm going to ask, I believe this colloquy has occurred
you really should
in its
know what the
full
code
measure.
is.
Okay.
And we'll ask that if there's anybody else in the public who wish to speak to this issue, specifically the issue that's before us today, which is whether to give direction to staff regarding an appeal from the Planning Commission resolution.
Good morning. Mike Miller, Director of Public Works. I'm here because I just made a request recently of County Council to give us some direction, so I think this would come back to you anyway. The reason is the Planning Commission, as a condition, told the applicant to apply for an encroachment permit through the Public Works Department. And in our process of encroachment permits, we have a section under permit non-acceptable applications, and it states that no application will be accepted nor permit issued for construction or maintaining a loading platform upon a right-of-way or for erecting, using, maintaining, or thereon a post, pole, column, or structure to support advertising signs. Any installation is an illegal encroachment permit. This must be appealed to the board because under this basis, we wouldn't issue an encroachment permit. When we looked back through our file this morning, we found that the last application the Public Works Department received was in March 2007, and it was for a bench in this area. We haven't seen the latest drawings, so we can't comment on where the encroachment is or if it's similarly the same size or any of the other information the Planning Commission included in their decision. So I just wanted to weigh in, so if you're aware that once we review this, we might have to bring it to you for consideration anyway.
So could that be wrapped up in one meeting?
We can give you the information necessary, and we can return it with the report that comes to you, I would assume. I just want to have to save you 2 trips.
Yeah, well, thank you, I guess. Anybody else wish to speak to this issue before bringing it back to the board?
Hi there. My name is Beth Hartline. I'm the marketing director at the Murphy's Hotel and also the secretary for the Murphy's Business Association. And I come here today to say that I'm confused about the appeal process. My understanding was that we had 15 days for somebody to appeal this. I understood that to be Tom Tryon as a personal appeal. Now it sounds like it's up to the board to appeal it. What is the difference? If the board appeals it versus one person appeals it, does that make a difference? And I also want to say that this has been a 17-month process that has been very detrimental to not only the hotel, but to Murphy's business merchants and the residents. It's distracted us from doing our business. It's been detrimental to attracting new business in town. We've had to defend our position now for 17 months, which comes from a very personal one-man campaign. And it's taken me away from my day-to-day duties of marketing the hotel and bringing in new business and tending to my customers. It's forced me into a position to have to draft lengthy documents to defend our position and quoting county code constantly to the county, plus attending endless meetings. I've had to go out, according to our Commissioner Bill Mason, asked me to go out and get a petition saying what do the residents and what do the merchants feel about this particular issue, about the sign. I went out, I collected a petition of 70 businesses and 30 residents who all said they want the sign, whether it's neon or not. They need the sign to increase their business. Then the community leaders started to come to me asking me, what is the problem here? I had the MBA president come to me, Chamber of Board members come to me from the Chamber, the Community Club, Renewal and Relief have come, local architects and customers have all asked me, what is the problem with this sign? And I shared what I thought Tom Tryon was trying to accomplish. It was a neon sign. That's according to county code. It's in the county right-of-way. That's according to county code. He had concern over whether the tree was dying and needed to be replaced. And Renewal and Relief said no, that was not going to be in their plan. That was not an issue for them. The Community Club won't take a political stand but can't understand why this is such a problem for us to get a sign up. So I don't understand why Tom has objected so vehemently against this sign. At first I quoted his reasons. Now I'm just asking from the hotel and the community, what is the problem? Is this a personal issue? And what have we done to piss Tom Tryon off? Thank you.
I do have the encroachment permit that I bought in May 15, 2007. The encroachment permit that I bought says that it grants to the applicant Dorian Fott and has designated contractors to perform the work specified in the plans submitted in the application of April 30, 2007, subject to the terms and conditions set forth in this application and following special conditions. I had a permit, an encroachment permit from the Public Works to put a bench in that was 6 or 8 feet around, and now the Public Works is telling me that I don't have an encroachment permit to put up a pole. This is really hard. This is really incredible that you guys can do this. It's just amazing.
Dorian, I have a question.
Well, I want to reiterate what the agenda item is before us, because I think we're beginning to range far afield. The board has got just one item before us. It is not to hear the merits or the arguments or what the documentation is, and I do not want to encourage any further comment on that topic by either board or members of the public or staff. I'm asking that people comment specifically on the question of whether the board should direct staff to proceed with an appeal or a review, whatever this hybrid that we're talking about is. And so I would again ask that people be specific to that and not range into the actual content of an appeal should one take place. So while it is an important issue what has been permitted and what our ordinances and our code require, that is not the subject of this particular item 8A.
Oh, you make me scratch my head when you have the Public Works Director, who has probably been directed by Tom Tryon to find some flaw in the system, to come up here and make sure that you realize that there is a flaw in the system to deny this project. I'm coming up here to say I have a permit.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Segala.
You recognize me?
I do.
Actually, I don't know anything about the issue in front of us, but it's become apparent to me that we got a problem with bureaucracy. What's the bottom of that problem? Is it the sign ordinance? If the sign ordinance is hurting business, maybe we should review the sign ordinance. What's happening there? Also, an issue was raised about a supervisor not being allowed to vote because there'd be a conflict of interest. It seems to me if Tom had an interest in that hotel or an interest into an adjacent building or something, he would have a personal interest in the issue and therefore would need to recluse himself. If he's just passionate about for or against neon signs or anything else, just like supervisors have different opinions on everything. Sometimes they're passionate about things. If they're passionate about something, do they have to be reclused because they're passionate? That doesn't make sense. So it seemed that unless the supervisor is connected in some way with the applicant, then they should be able to vote. Thank you.
Okay, just to try to re-clarify what I interpret as the advice from County Council, the question was whether an appellant, be it a Board of Supervisor or any other voting member of any body, could actually be the appellant and vote on, because we are essentially constituting ourselves as a judicial body, whether you could then both appeal an item and vote on it. So it does have no question about passion or position. It has to do with your role in filing an appeal if one is filed. That was the advice from our council. I just want to make sure everybody understands that issue. Am I correct?
You are correct. And I should sum up by saying that it's not uncommon for a board of supervisors to review a decision by the Planning Commission. It's entirely appropriate, and that review does not in any way signify the outcome of the appeal. What I had hoped to avoid by my previous comment was a discussion of the merits, the point being that the decision should come after a full hearing of all the evidence, and not today. That today does not affect or prejudice the outcome of the appeal.
Right. Hence my previous admonishment, so far wildly ignored or widely ignored. But, please.
Hi. I'm not going to ignore you. Betsy Duncan, Copperopolis. I'm a little confused. I saw an addendum to the agenda that stated that this issue was going to be before the board today, so I can see where people got confused. However, we have an appeal process, and if Supervisor Tryon wants to file an appeal, he can file an appeal. I don't understand why we're before the board to determine whether to review whether or not Tom Tryon files an appeal. Just file the appeal and hear it like you'd hear any other appeal, and then we're done today. What's happening here makes no sense. It makes no sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And that, by the way, was directly on point to the agenda item before us. Thank you. Other comments from the public before we bring this back for board consideration? Okay, any comment before moving to a decision? I have one, which is that I do agree with the previous speaker. I think that we have an appeals process. What's before us today seems to be somewhat neither fish nor fowl. I would vote favorably to one of two circumstances, neither of which I see in front of us. One is a review of the policy, ordinances, or procedures, as Mr. Segala originally, in his first point, made. I would be for that, because I think from time to time we need to take a look at this, and if it does have broad implications for the look of our towns, or if we have different towns with different sensibilities about it, it would be good to check that out and see where people are at. That would be in a study session or a public hearing that we'd talk about those kinds of things. That's not before us today, but I would favor it. Secondly, on the question of hearing an appeal, we have no choice. If there's a timely appeal, that is before us, that is formal and through our appeals processes, then we must, regardless of the bureaucratic nature of it, people have the right to appeal. Any citizen can appeal a decision, in this case of a planning commission, and that could be brought before this Board of Supervisors in a timely fashion. And I would not really be in a position to vote for or against. It would simply be a fact. It would be something that all of us would, by necessity and by our rules and procedures, have to participate in. So my vote on this, because neither of those are before us, my vote is to not take board action, not to put us on record for or against hearing this, but to respond if there is a legitimate and specific appeal before us, notwithstanding the fact that it looks like we're going to have to deal with something from Public Works in any event. So I'm assuming we're going to have a meeting to review some or all of what went before the Planning Commission. But what that will be is, in my view, subject to the processes that are I think, very specific and do not seem to be before us. So I'm expressing my position since nobody else.
I didn't know you were going to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't want to cut you off, but
I'm done with my comment. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought you were going back to a point of order, which we've had to return to several times in the last 30 minutes, but working the way down to the chair. This issue it surprises me. If anything has ever gone from the sublime to the ridiculous in this much time, I have not witnessed it. The question that I had last week that I think brought this back to the board today with the direction from County Council was that I was not sure of the process or the legality of bringing this back, and we only had four board members here last week. Therefore, if we voted 2-2, it would have come back today anyway, and County Council has given us what his opinion of why or how this issue can or would or might come back to the board. And to be honest with you, I'm still I think it's a little bit nebulous still, actually. But my question was to define the process, and I think we've tried to do that today, although most of the time has been spent on a quasi-hearing over the issue. I'm still not sure of the process and which one is appropriate. But I can say that this issue has been masterized to the point where it's way past the point of redundancy. And there's still a question in my mind, even though we've had it explained quite a bit, whether this is an appeal, a review, whether a person brings the appeal, or the board hears the review, or what have you. And it's been an incredible exchange here today. It really has. So what I think is that without further investigation that I've already done, I think we've gone, like I said, past the point of redundancy here. This project has been approved so many times, and there is an appeal process that is available to those who wish to appeal, that Supervisor Callaway has mentioned. And so for those person or those persons who want to make that appeal, I encourage them to do that. But I don't believe this should come back before this full board. And that's where I am on this.
Other board comments before taking this to a vote?
I have a question. Tom, if the board turns this down, are you going to bring it then to the normal appeal process back to the board?
I haven't made that decision yet. I mean, what the board will be saying and putting in precedent is that an individual board member cannot, or the board will not entertain a request from an individual board member to review a planning commission decision. That individual board members now have to go out and individually appeal. Is that what the board wants to say? Or are the three of you going to take care of the three of you, and Maria and I are going to be out in the cold?
Really?
I'm not sure
Tom,
that
I don't know that
particular
that's
issue came
a fair
up.
comment. I mean,
Well, it is a fair comment. I mean, either board members will be able to request a review from the board of planning commission decisions, or we won't, and all board members will have to go out when they want a review of planning commission decisions and file an individual appeal. I mean, that's the precedent that we're going to be putting in place here.
Well, actually, this does raise a question that came up earlier, which is there any precedent or history of this particular role in bringing something forward?
On several occasions, yes. It's not unusual.
It's not inappropriate for the board, for whatever reason, to bring this before the board for review, reconsideration, appeal, whatever the term you want to use. That's not uncommon.
Rita, any further?
I guess my feeling is I don't have a problem supporting. I don't want to go through all the machinations about going through the formal appeal process if it's going to come back to the board, Tom, which is why I asked you the question. If you're going to appeal it anyway, then I just assume pass this, let's move on, get it back before the board, deal with it, and move on so the hotels can do what it is that they are going to do based on an appeal to the board. So I just want to bring it to the board. If you're going to appeal it either way.
I'll make the motion to bring the decision of the Planning Commission back before the board for review on the issue of signage in the county right-of-way in Murphy's for a new sign for the hotel. That's my motion. Is that the appropriate motion, Jim?
And the purpose of where you take exception to the Planning Commission?
That's the merits. I'm just saying it needs to come back to the board for a review.
All right.
I'm not interested in discussing the merits today.
Okay.
Nor should I, apparently.
Okay, I'll second that.
Motion second. Is there further discussion? All right.
Can you poll the board, please?
I will poll the board. We will roll call this.
No, it's not a poll. It's a vote.
Well, I would ask for a poll.
Roll call vote.
He's asking for a roll call vote. I am, as a chair, calling for a roll call vote, and I will start with Supervisor Thomas.
I am voting no.
Supervisor Callaway.
Yes.
No.
Okay, there is a no, yes, no. Supervisor Tryon, oh, great. I'm going to vote no. I do believe this will come before us in a formal appeal and that we will hear it, but not as a board appeal, but as an individual appeal. Motion denied on a 3-2 vote. We now move to the review of correspondence, reports, and various matters of concern. Let's start this week with Supervisor Callaway.
If it's past Property Owners Council meeting this week, Council of Governments, Area 12 Agency on Aging, and those are all my board-appointed meetings.
Supervisor Claudino.
Let's see. Well, first, today is the second. I just want to remind everybody that is here and those listening that, unless I'm mistaken, the annual ice cream social is this Thursday.
Oh, really?
In the Master Gardeners area from 2:30 until 4. So you might want to mark that down. The other thing I'd like to bring up is I received a communication from the Senior Center that, according to them, each of us have received. And this is from the lady that runs the kitchen there, Mary DeWitt. And this is a challenge to the board and or the board's representatives. I've seen some of you cook, so that's why I say some of your representatives. The cook, Mary says she's the cook at the Calaveras Senior Center, and she sent this letter to each of the board members asking us to help by making us participate, or asking us to participate in a chili cook-off and car show to raise money for the things they need for the meal program at the senior center. And participating will be the kitchen staff at the senior center also. And there will be a classic car event there, and there will be selling chili and hot dogs for $5. Sodas are extra and the money will buy a meat slicer, which they desperately need. So what they're asking for is not a donation of funds, but of time and alleged expertise. This occurs on October 25th of this year from 9 till 3 p.m. at the senior center. So I don't want anybody on this board to say they weren't asked, challenged, invited, or otherwise requested to attend. And I intend to participate, and I challenge the rest of you to do so. It's a free meal in case anybody on the board is interested in a free meal. You cook your own, of course, and I don't have any idea if others will be participating in this or not. But it's a chili cook-off, 25th of October at the Senior Center from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And in showing due courtesy to the folks at the Senior Center, I would expect each supervisor to respond in a timely manner whether they can do this or not.
Are you proposing that we constitute ourselves as a team and come up with a group?
No.
You want to compete in a chili?
Actually, yes, because according to, I have not checked back with Mary, but according to her letter, it will be the 5 supervisors competing against the 2 cooks at the senior center.
Five as a collective body.
Right. No. I interpreted it as a team versus team effort here.
I don't think so.
Well, let's find out.
There's too much hiding going on. I've been around here for almost 4 years. I know what that means. You have to get out there and show your stuff.
Well, it would appear we have two ideas as to how to respond, but my proposal...
We'll ask the cooks there.
All right, and see what they...
If you like, I will provide the can openers. For those of you that feel culinarily challenged.
I want to state for the record that Humbug Creek Farm is prepared to provide hot chilies and many other ingredients for a fresh and Calaveras-grown approach to the subject. And I would suggest that we do this as a team effort, if only to show folks that we can actually constitute ourselves as such. So
you're saying that we're very good at stirring the pot.
Well,
okay.
And
that's the deal. That's all I have.
We'll decide, I guess, as a group sometime soon and timely. Supervisor Tryon.
We do not have anything to bring before the board.
Supervisor Thomas.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think that there is a City of Angels meeting today at the park about branding that marketing 4 to 6. That I hope to be able to go to that, and I would encourage other members to be there if you can. Let's see. Tomorrow is the Chamber's Leadership Calaveras Day, the first Wednesday of the month, and I'll be participating in that. Okay, we have some other things that keep kind of reoccurring that come across emails. Do you recall there was a request that was placed by a mapping organization that said that they wanted us to weigh in on whether we agreed about the naming of a creek, K Creek or something?
Yes, that's in my district, and there has been quite a bit of consideration of this already.
Okay, well, do we need to make any kind of a formal response?
I believe that this is being taken care of in district and shouldn't become a board issue.
Okay. The other thing that I'm reminded of, or I want to bring it up again, is that I don't think that we've made a specific announcement out about our December, first meeting in December about the CSAC conflict that we created.
He said he'd take care of it.
Okay. All right. Well, that pretty much concludes my report then.
Thank you. I have several meetings, board-related assignments. Today, I have mental health board meeting at 4 o'clock, which means that I will not be able to go to the branding meeting, but please do express my interest if any of you go. Secondly, on Friday, I have a First Five board meeting, and on Monday, a Paloma Community Planning meeting. I also am in receipt of a rather sad letter, which I will read because it does compliment county staff along the way to delivering bad news, but this is from the Sacramento Wheelman. It says, Calaveras County, its citizens, government officials, employees, and businesses have worked very hard in partnership with Sacramento Wheelman to make the Sierra Century and Calaveras County an outstanding cycling event. The friendliness and enthusiasm of the citizens toward the cyclists is unmatched in any event I have worked or participated in. As I said to you in person, their efforts, and especially yours, to make this event happen are truly appreciated. As you and many others are aware, there is a significant drop in riders, which can be attributed to many factors: economy, gas prices, etc. Primary amongst those is the difficulty of the course, which tends to draw only the elite riders. These factors, low number of participants, higher prices for food, fuel, and services, resulted in a substantial net loss for the club. It is with heartfelt regret that we will not be continuing the Sierra Century in Calaveras County. I cannot thank the citizens of Calaveras County enough for their hospitality and hard work to make this a great 2 years. A sad loss, because this did bring business. We worked very hard to bring them from Amador to Calaveras, but unfortunately they are going to be unable to sustain that effort. It was not without putting large claw marks in their ankles as they kicked the door shut in their face, but this is not going to happen next year, and we will need to continue to look for events and things that can bring economic activity to our county. And then one other item, which I'm not sure came to other board members, I want to make sure it did. This comes from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services and is related to declaring an emergency. Okay, everybody's got that and copies to give out to people. All right, that's all I have to report. Supervisor, anybody else? No, that's the last one.
Bob, Jim,
Bob,
Carol.
yes, I'm sorry. Bob, Jim, and Carol, any news to report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd like to make sure the public's aware that after close consultation with the Sheriff's Department, the County Administrator's Office has released a request for qualifications for a project manager for the jail construction project. The responses are due from interested firms or parties by September 23rd. Further information, including all documents related to the request for qualifications, can be accessed directly from the homepage of the county's website at www.co.calaveras.ca.us. I never get tired of saying that. And we have affirmatively sent out in excess of, I think, between 150 and 200 emails to firms with expertise or experience or presumed interest around the state of California and in this area, including firms that had previously expressed an interest directly to the Sheriff's Department of being notified. I spoke personally on Friday to the president of the Calaveras Builders Association to let him know about this and ask that he inform his members and emailed directly to him copies of the RFP. So we're doing our best to get the word out in this community and the community around the state as well. This is probably the single most important and certainly the single largest capital project this county is going to be doing for quite some time. And I think in the interests of doing justice to the project and supporting the Sheriff's Department, County Council, and County Administration, engaging a professional project manager will make a huge difference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jim?
Nothing.
Carol? I do have one last thing to report. I'm sorry I neglected to mention this, but we did have a fast-moving fire in District 2 up in the Butler Hill, West Point area. Yesterday afternoon and evening, 2 houses were lost at least, and but I wanted to comment that the response, both CDF, particularly the air attack, was remarkable, accurate, and timely, and kept it from going a lot further than it wound up doing. And also the West Point Fire and neighboring support from other fire departments was very rapid, and I was actually, because I could see the entire thing from our back porch, it really was something to watch. Anything less than that response could have made it the much-feared conflagration up the canyon, but they got on it so fast that it was limited to relatively small acreage. So I wanted to thank, for public record, I wanted to thank both West Point Fire, Central, McCallum Hill, and others that responded, and CDF. And that brings us to a 10-minute recess between the board meeting and the study session that will begin dealing with Prop 40 per capita grant projects. We'll commence that at 10:30. Okay, a little belatedly, we are going to commence with our Prop 40 discussion, and this brings Shirley Ryan to the fore, who's been working with the Parks and Rec Commission to try to clarify this for us.
Good morning. Shirley Ryan, County Administrative Office. Today we're here to once again do a study session on Prop 40. We have members of our Parks and Rec Commission here that will be doing a presentation as well. The last study session we did was back in January of this year, and it was to look at the current projects that were being worked on by the various community groups and the Park and Rec Commission, and they have done a great job with the community groups and facilitating the necessary information through our office. They've also looked at additional projects that may be out there for money that had to be reallocated or had heretofore been unallocated. One of the things that I want to remind the board of a few things. First of all is that we are rapidly approaching the deadline for Prop 40 monies. The deadline for completion of the project and reimbursement by the state is June 30th, 2010. I'm looking at Pat because we've had discussions back and forth of what that real date is. And that means that the project has to be sent in, applied for, completed according to construction terms by the state and requirements by the state, and reimbursed, a final inspection by the state and reimbursement received by the county by June 30th, 2010. Needless to say, that's less than 2 years away. And our track record so far hasn't been stellar, to say the least. There's a number of reasons, and I think the Commission has been working diligently with the groups to provide our office with the information that we need. However, just due to workload and staffing issues, it becomes abundantly clear that things are not moving as rapidly as everybody would like. One of the things to consider is the projects that they're recommending and putting forth. Some of them can be combined under one project, and wherever that can be done, I highly recommend it. Because by doing a limited number of projects, I believe we have a much higher chance of success in completing those projects. If we end up midway in a project and we do not have it completed by the timely to get reimbursement from the state, then the county will be responsible for or the nonprofit will be responsible for those costs because reimbursement will not be forthcoming. Another thing to consider is not only is it up to as far as the state is concerned, the county is the applicant, and that's the bottom line. They are not as concerned as how we're doing it, except for as long as it's within the requirements. But we are the applicant. Needless to say, that we are responsible for the application, the appropriate construction of the project, and the maintenance in ensuring that project is maintained and open to the public for either the 10 or 20 years, depending on the amount of the grant. So it's not just a quick, let's get the application in, okay, the county's done, leave it to the community groups and the commission to ensure that the project is completed. Because the county is the applicant, we do have the oversight to ensure that construction is done if RFPs are required, if prevailing wages required, whatever. It is ultimately our responsibility. I just want to put that out there because it's a long process. One of the other things that I put forth in our memo is the ability to use 10% of Prop 40 grant funds for administrative costs. Up until this time, that has not been the recommendation of the Commission nor of the County Administrator's Office. However, as we're approaching the current time frames, we may want to look and use a percentage of the money to fund an extra hire position. Currently, the staff person in our office that has been working with the Commission on these grants is on a leave of absence, and that medical leave of absence may be extended through the end of the year. So that is going to impact the ability to work on this in our office and work with the Commission. Just something to put out there.
One question. Is this a paid leave of absence, or are we having some appreciable budgeted savings, and could that also be used if we were to?
I believe there's a coordination of benefits, meaning that there is an impact to our salary and benefits, but there is some savings. But there will also be other job duties that will have to be covered. But the extra hire, if we chose to fund an extra hire position with Prop 40 money, that would enable that position to work solely on Prop 40 projects with the Parks and Rec Commission. Now, as I said, this has been something that has been brought to the Commission before and to the board, and there has not been any significant support of it in the past, but it's something the board may want to consider. And with that, just that brief information, I want to turn it over to the President of the Commission, Mason Goodall, and he's going to do a presentation on the projects and what they've been working on in their recommendations.
Good morning. I am Mason Goodale, the Chairman of the Parks and Recreation Commission. We gave documents that were to be a part of your board packet today, which included a spreadsheet, color-coded, and a information page which hopefully explained clearly what is on the spreadsheet, and also the fact that the spreadsheet is a working document in that this is not a cast in stone. The notes that are here potentially could have changed from the time we needed to submit this information to today's date. We've modified language, we've changed columns, we've done everything we can to make this as clear a document for ourselves, as well as to turn it over to you folks. The goal of the Commission, as we see it with Prop 40, the assignment you've given us, is to ensure that the $1.2 million that was granted or potentially granted to our county, that the projects that have been accepted by board resolution, come to completion, or come back to you as not being viable. Therefore, monies become available for other projects. We have succeeded in interfacing with every community group that had an initial accepted project. We have pursued, each commissioner in their own district has pursued projects in the districts where monies were available, such that the $1.2 million is equally allocated among the 5 districts based on the wishes of the supervisors, either past or present, and the funding matches. Some of our work has resulted in projects simply being abandoned, and monies became available within that district, and so new projects are noted on your spreadsheet. They are noted in green. These projects have been, to use the common vernacular these days, vetted by our commissioners using a tool we've created to try and give these community groups an idea of what they're getting into when they're pursuing grant funds. Part of the problem, we believe initially, was that community groups thought that they applied to their supervisor and that the supervisor bequeathed them the funds that were due for their particular project, and they waited for the money. And then once they got the money, they were going to get going on the project. This was, this is a simplification, but generally speaking, there were groups out there that was their impression. So some of those groups have gone to bat and done remarkably well in signing joint use agreements. Land tenure issues have been resolved, et cetera, all the complicated work that's involved in complying with the state guidelines. And other groups just said, forget it. We don't even want to deal with it. So explained here is is an outline of the existing and new projects and their current status. Does the board wish me to go through these line by line? Because I would prefer not to. I think they're fairly well explained. And,
very well explained.
And our recommendation, at least up until about 10 minutes ago, was that the board approve these as we have them outlined, with some contingency that it is possible on these new projects that there may be some issues which are unresolvable and that result in those projects being abandoned. And in such case, at the present time, given the short number of months between now and June 30th of 2010, our recommendation as a commission is that no new projects be pursued, that any funds that are made available by a project failing or failing to meet the guidelines, those monies need to be transferred, regardless of district, to an existing project so that the county does not lose out on the funds which have been made available by the state. That is our number one priority in all of this. It would be shameful and politically very unpopular for our county to lose out on any of these funds. So given that, that was the tenor of the discussions that we had at our last commission meeting. So the projects have been presented. The new projects What I will do is rather than analyze these projects, just briefly outline them, or just briefly mention what they are. For District 1, the Jenny Lynn's Vets Memorial District has a gazebo improvement project, and there is a shade structure project that San Andreas Elementary is pursuing. Those are the new projects within District 1. Each of those is a $15,000 project. There are new projects noted for District 3. One of them includes White Pines Park improvements with a fitness trail along the lake. There's funds that are being pursued by Arnold Rim Trail, a very exciting project for the Arnold Rim Trail group. The Emerson Courtright Ball Field has some serious improvements that are needed, and that's a project that's been included for District 3, as well as the Stanislaus National Forest, and within the Stanislaus National Forest, the McCollum Coast to Crest Trail. Those are the new projects that have been approved by our commission. And outside of that, there's been additional funding that's been made available to the project in Angels Camp known as the Bret Harte Angels Project, which is the athletic complex adjacent to the high school. That's it for the summary of the new projects, and I'm open to answer any questions the board may have.
All right. Any questions from the board?
Mason, thank you very much for this. On the transferring of funds when we get down to the wire to an ongoing project, is it the Park and Recs Commission's recommendation that you're just going to leave it to the board? Because then we're going to get, then it comes back to them, because when you start getting down to the wire, instead of negotiating, I mean, my position's always been any monies left in District 3, let it go to Bret Harte High School. They have an approved project, they need the money. I don't want to lose it either. But, I mean, I'm not locked into it being at Bret Harte, but that was the only one we knew that could accept the money right away without going through changes with the state. So, I mean...
The Commission's perspective was that the funds should go to existing and approved projects. Any funds that remain available towards the deadline. I don't believe we specifically approved. I'm certain we didn't have any sort of motion to specifically approve that those should go to the Bret Harte Angels project. That is an obvious choice because it's been approved, in fact inspected, and the monies are able to be nearly immediately refunded from the state. So that's an identifiable project. It's possible there may be other projects in the future, but that would certainly be a good catch-all, most certainly.
So I meant...
That's not anything we approved by a motion in the Commission, and I'm here to not answer on what my viewpoint is, but what the Commission has done.
So I mean, when we're getting down to the wire, it's who could use the money, who has the approved project, who has it going, that we know we're not going to have to deal with the state on.
Correct.
So just to make sure it stays in county.
Right. Okay. Regardless of district is our perspective.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
If a District 1 project fails, it shouldn't at this point be, okay, what can we do with this District 1 money? The money should be deemed Calaveras money and immediately reallocated to approved projects.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to note that I feel like we're already down to the wire. We're at the wire from here on out. There is no further time for much of anything.
Correct.
Mary would like to say something.
Mary Boblet, District 3 Parks and Rec Commissioner. I just want to say, in agreement with Mason, we are down to the wire. And if we put forward these projects today, we will be shepherding these projects to completion, and we don't expect any of them to fail because they've been vetted. So we've done our analysis, we've done our homework, and I just don't see that happening. I don't see that scenario happening except as Plan Z. So these projects are really good projects. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mason, thank you for your hard work. Do you want to weigh in on this issue about the extra hire and the unfortunate situation that we're in with Mike Miller being out, and how are we going to get this done unless we do authorize the use of some of these funds?
That's a perfect segue into the second thing I wanted to talk about. The Commission has worked hard at spending all $1.2 million. Shirley attended our last Commission meeting and made the suggestion of up to 10% of the funds from Prop 40 could be used for an extra hire. Our Commission made no motion and neither approved nor negated that as a group. There was lively discussion about it. My perspective and the perspective of our Commission is that there needs to be somebody assigned these tasks that can accomplish them quickly and effectively. And my personal viewpoint, coming from private enterprise where employees are judged on their job performance. I assume the same thing happens at the county, although there's some debate about that in the newspapers. But there needs to be somebody who's got recreation tasks on their job description, regardless of what department they work for. Years ago, I was a lifeguard at the Dutch Flat Community Swimming Pool in Dutch Flat, which is in Placer County, and my boss was in the Planning Commission because they didn't have a recreation department in Placer County at that time. And the Public Works guy would come out and take care of the pool. And we were pretty much answering to both those guys as lifeguards. Short term, you could look at taking some of the money from Prop 40 and ensuring that that an employee has these tasks to perform, that they will be judged on by their own supervisor, and not necessarily you, but whoever's their boss. I feel like somebody needs this in their job description. They need to have recreation issues and the fulfillment of these tasks as part of their review when they come upon when they're due for their evaluation. I don't think that happens. That has not happened under the present structure, in my view. And so the County Administrative Office, for all these years, has been extremely helpful and very well-intentioned in regards to the goals that we have and that you've given the Recreation Commission. But there's a lot going on in that office. And many, many days, getting the paperwork signed and mailed to the state, gosh, that's just got to wait because of X, Y, and Z that happens. And it's our perception, it's the perception of the community groups that are involved here that I'm sure many of you have heard from, that the county's CAO's office is slow to respond. And the time for slow to respond is over, or we're at risk of losing these funds. So it is the perspective of the Commission that there needs to be a county employee who is the contact person at the state. Shirley's made it clear to us that the state does not want to hear from the different project groups. The state does not want to hear from me. Mary, Pat, other commissioners who've contacted them directly just to get an answer. They want to hear from a contact person at the county. And since the county administrative office is the assigned department, then that's who they're looking to hear from. And we're in support of that, but feel like it's been that the county's management of this needs to improve. And we're not pointing fingers of blame here. We're very appreciative of all the help that we've been given. It's simply that it's obvious to the community groups and to our commission that we need quicker response and more accountability. So that's my response there. And just to go on, there will be other things besides Prop 40. You know, you've assigned us a commission. One of our goals, of course, is to put ourselves out of business in 5 years. So we have about 4 years to go. But in terms of creating some sort of plan for recreation management in our county, I don't know that all the supervisors share that goal. I think you guys like what we do, and maybe you'd like to have us around forever. But we feel like there needs to be a more specific manager or management group in charge of recreation. So as long as we're around, we would like to have an employee whose job task it is to listen to us, and when we're given directives by you, to have an employee to refer to get the bureaucratic work done. We find ourselves doing a lot of it, and we're happy to do it. And we actually, at the August meeting, explained to Shirley that we're happy to do much of this footwork. Our commissioners are very motivated. But there comes nuts and bolts and getting a signature and bothering county council and getting an envelope in the mail that somebody needs to be able to do effectively. And right now, it's time for that to be done quickly and effectively. So that's my statement on that. Fellow commissioners, do you have any additional comments on it? Or do you feel like I represented us well? Okay.
Don't just hire an employee. Hire somebody who's enthusiastic about parks and recreation, not just somebody who's interested. I would also ask that this person maybe could assume duties on the master plan for parks and recreation that we're developing right now. We have a draft that's our first draft. It's either 90% or 100% complete. And this plays right into the, to the general plan. So for us to complete this master plan, Parks and Recreation master plan, it's going to involve a lot of time. Frankly, I've spent 40, 50 hours a week for the past 4 weeks. When you average out my time up to this point this year, it's about 30 hours per week for Parks and Recreation as a volunteer. I'm just one guy. There's some more commissioners that are out there doing the same thing. So get somebody who's enthusiastic and take some of the responsibility.
Today at 4 o'clock, the City of Angels is going to talk about their new branding. And it involves a frog wearing a fanny pack with a water bottle. And what's he going to do? He's going to recreate. They're going to make the City of Angels a base camp for the Sierras. So what we're doing as a commission is vital to this economy. So if you want to play into what cost-benefit analysis you want to do on what benefits you're going to get out of this, I don't know. I haven't run the numbers, but I think we could do that and find some benefit. We've worked really hard to shore up relationships with the BOR, the BLM, the Forest Service. We're working with all of these groups that involve recreation in our county that will bring tourists here. So it's your best choice to have someone at the county level recognize that this is really good for our economy, and it's really good PR too.
Okay, any board questions? Any further board questions before we go over the various things before us?
We might want to have some discussion on the 10% that the board earlier gave direction should not be collected to offset the administrative costs associated with Prop 40 projects. We're hearing from the commissioners that they would like some staff assigned. I don't see how it can be full-time staff, quite frankly. But I think, at some point before we leave today, we need to discuss that 10% and whether the board wishes to allocate that 10% to administrative costs, however defined. And does that have any particular significant implications to the projects out there as far as what they are anticipating for total funds? If those funds which they are currently anticipating were reduced by 10%, what would be the implications on those projects? I don't know that because I don't think they're anticipating at this point that the board is going to take the 10% administrative match. But I think we need to have that discussion before we finish the day.
So for me, that begs the question of, at least for the completion of the Proposition 40 projects, to come up with a figure of what would be necessary, perhaps 10%, perhaps there's a lesser percent of the total amount that would accommodate staff to at least assure the success of this effort, the Prop 40, at the June 10th, or the June 2010 deadline, and how much money that would take. I'm not convinced it would take an entire 10%. Maybe it would, but I think that's part of the discussion. I agree wholeheartedly with Supervisor Tryon that it would be a shame to lose any, especially all, of these projects for lack of attention, for lack of staff time to be dedicated to this, but I haven't heard if there is an alternative to the full 10%, so I think we need to have some analysis of that.
I'd like to weigh in on this as well. It seems to me there's three different tasks that we have before us. One is to deal with Prop 40 in a timely and effective way, and that requires some level of administrative support and timely completion of duties. Secondly, we have the master plan to finish so that we can begin receiving funds, so that at least we're eligible for funds that we're currently not receiving. That also takes some level of administrative support and completion of documents, although a lot of that work has been, I think, accomplished. A third thing, in my view, is and maybe this is part of the master plan, we need to make a board decision about what the ultimate place for Parks and Rec is going to be. Is it a county department? Is it an independent district? Is it a whatever this thing going on now is, you become commissioners for life in this kind of middle, I guess we'd call it a purgatory role that we've placed people in. And that, too, getting those things prepared, either for votes of the public or for board action, the documents that we need to exercise, and all the things necessary to do one or another of those choices would also take some administrative support. What I'm interested in right now is Prop 40. I don't think we have to deal with all the rest of that. It seems to me we have two sources. One is the question of if 10% is it, we've got $120,000 to work with, and as I see it, Prop 40 only takes, really, we got 6 months of hard work, and anything after that is pretty much by the by, although there will be some things, and our current guy is out. So there's some level of savings, which I hope we would draw from and allocate toward this endeavor.
I think we need to
if there's something available. And I don't know what's available, so I would ask that question. Is there savings? And if so, what portion of that might have normally been devoted to parks administration? There's some offset potential through the Prop 40 monies up to 10%, but I don't see no reason why we would have to spend that much to finish out Prop 40. If we get the master plan in place, we should have some revenue flow from future development coming in for Parks and Rec, and my hope would be that we might include whatever administrative work we see in the Prop 40 stuff could finish out with whatever the remaining work is necessary to finish the master plan. So I put those two things in the same category under the same person because it just flows. But my hope is, because I read this and it looks to me like the money's allocated pretty thoroughly, and it was the board's intent, and we led you to we voted on this, we made decisions, we put it forward that we were going to spend all that money on actual parks. That was our desire, to have this go directly to the acquisition and creation of park facilities. It would certainly create something of a difficult dispute at a time when we don't need to have disputes. We need to get on with the work of allocating Prop 40 funds. So I'd be worried if we got too much cut into monies that are already essentially earmarked for specific projects, and half of them are well on their way. I suppose we could have a contingency that if anything falls on its face, that we take that 10% out of that. But again, it seems to get into jurisdictional matters that might be more trouble than it would be effective in support of administrative activity. Just my thoughts on it. Anybody else have comment on that question?
I do. One, I support combining projects as Shirley recommended. I think that's going to help the process on the projects. I do support, and I didn't with the rest of the board, support moving 10% of the grant funds to hire a person. I'm very sad to hear about Mike. I do not, consistently do not, support taking general fund money and moving it into this in any way. When we have our CAO taking time off, working for no pay to make sure his department meets their 10% cut, I don't think it's appropriate that we balance this on the back of any general fund dollars we might be saving due to Mr. Miller being out. And I think that has to be up to the CAO to make that decision. As always, I do not support using any general fund dollars unless we discuss it at budget time. This is grant money. If we want to take grant money to support a position to help us move these projects through that state, through the state, then I would support doing that. That's all I will support besides combining projects. Again, I look to where staff's recommendation was. It was discussed at the Parks and Rec Committee meeting, i.e. taking the, of course, the ones I'm more familiar with would be the two White Pines Park projects. It's under $100,000, combining them, moving them forward. But I do not support the use of any general fund dollars at this time.
Are there comments on the question Tom raised?
If we can sort of dissect this a little bit, it's inconceivable to me that we could even approach $20,000 in this expenditure if you're going to work for 960 hours maximum in 6 months period of time. It has to be accomplished in 6 months. Isn't that a fair assessment?
We have a year.
You've got June of 21.9 months, something like that.
Okay. But who's counting?
The work needs to be done right away to get the projects underway so that they can be completed, inspected, and paid for by June 30th of 2010. So 6 months is a very good timeline for the bulk of this work being done. However, there are administrative tasks involved to request the inspector, to show the prevailing wage, to these reports that Shirley was referring to. Need to be, they can be compiled by community groups and commissioners, but they need to be sent through the county. The county is the assigned grantee. I think that's it. And all this government language is tough for me. I'm sorry, but so indeed 6 months of significant work to get many of these projects underway. But there will be work after that. It's not, we're not going to have, there may be some gaps. And that's, I don't believe you could take 120K, which would be 10% out of this plan effectively. But I don't know how much you need. You could have up to that, apparently, according to the guidelines. And I think I see Shirley Squirman in the background, so I'm going to let Shirley speak to this.
Great. Thank you.
If I can make a recommendation, in this spreadsheet, there is over $200,000 worth of reallocated or reallocated projects or new projects. The projects that have been previously allocated, we do not touch. I think we need to go back and look at what the estimated time frames are, how many hours that we're looking at in the office, and what the cost of that extra hire is, and then compare that to the projects that we're working with. I think if we work closely with the commission, we can. This has to come back to the board for board action. The projects were initially allocated via a minute order, so to change the minute order, we will need to bring that back as a board action item. At that time, I would recommend that in working with the Parks and Rec Commission to come up with an estimated cost of an extra hired person, the time frames and hours that person would work, and what that cost would be, and where to pull the money from the reallocation of projects would probably be the most reasonable thing to do at this point.
All right. Would that be acceptable to the board to instruct staff based on this study session to move forward under those?
Staying very focused on just Prop 40.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
It is a requirement under Prop 40 that the administrative cost has to be directly related to the Prop 40 projects.
All right. Well, based on Shirley's suggestion, I'd like to poll the board. If there's other comments before we do that, go ahead, Russ.
Well, I was just wondering the methodology. If we conclude today that it's a good idea to create this position or hire somebody, how would we go about doing that? To actually identify a person and get them on board.
It would be through the normal recruitment process. We would notify HR, determine the best level, whether it's at an administrative analyst position, and then recruit as we normally would.
Okay.
And we would be looking for somebody specifically with this type of experience related to grants, working with the state, and working with this type of a project.
Don't forget the enthusiasm.
And the enthusiasm. However, unfortunately, we cannot use Prop 40 money to work on the master plan.
All right. Let me poll the board on the subject. Again, we're not creating the position. We're asking staff to take a look at what is necessary, how many hours, what kind of tasks, what level of hire would need to take place, and come back with options both for types of jobs and funding that would be appropriate for the board to
Funding
consider.
is one place, the grant. Unless you want to wait till we do it at budget time and use general fund money, and I cannot support that. I will say that now.
And this would not be a permanent position, therefore it would be strictly an extra hire position.
Right. This is an extra hire. It has limited hours, and what we're really looking for is an appropriate rate of pay to accomplish the tasks necessary and to review our current position allocations to see whether anything fits. So
Can I make a
I'd like
comment?
to, of course.
I'd like to know how long that would take. How long will that take? What you're defining in regards to this position, how long does that take? You know how long it takes at my business. But I don't know how long it takes here.
Maybe we should bootleg it through your operation.
Being that we have to return to the board anyway, we're at least 2 weeks out, and I think we can get a board packet together by the end of the week so that we would be back within 2 to 3 weeks to the board.
Might this be timely enough to try to expedite?
No.
No?
I don't want to, I don't think it's fair to staff to say, okay, we want it next week. I mean, unless it's an emergency, let it have, staff have
She only has for 2
weeks. 3 weeks?
3 weeks, because that would be normal
Okay.
for board packets.
So we have the creation of the position in as little as 3 weeks. The question I think that Mason was asking would be, from the time we're actually posting a position, how long does it take to get somebody aboard?
So in fact, I was asking, how long does it take to determine what this person does and how much they get paid and all that?
Oh, okay. Well,
that was primarily, I mean, is this, because that has everything to do with what money you're subtracting from here. Okay, because that's what you're talking about doing. You're talking about subtracting from projects and paying an employee.
the answer is 3 weeks.
I believe
Okay.
there's a current position that would be on
We're going to be starting essentially, I think, from scratch on this, because it's going to be very limited in scope of their work.
But an analyst, I'm just thinking an analyst position with the focus and duties on Parks and Rec.
We'll contemplate that in the board item that comes back.
That's to work with administration. What we're expecting, based on this conversation and a board poll, which will take place in a moment, we would expect that the focus would be limited, would be specific to Prop 40, would come out of Prop 40 funds, or anything else that you could surprise us with that needs our approval.
The recreation,
and that it be accomplished in that items for action on that would come before, and recommendations would come before the board 3 weeks from today. All right?
The Recreation Commission meets on the 17th, I believe, if I have it correct. And we could, since we're a little more dynamic in how we handle our agenda, we could potentially hear from the CAO's office at that meeting in regards to this and make a recommendation amendment to the existing projects that would match up, and therefore expedite the approval of the new projects, and the action that you need to take, the resolution that you need to take, wouldn't be delayed. That's our concern. In addition, the Recreation Commission would like to have members on whatever interview team or that is hiring this new person, if that's not inappropriate to request.
Normally, it would be the HR department that would constitute whatever panel for interviews would take place, and that your request can be noted and forwarded to them. But normally, we have dispassionate, neutral observers to participate in that kind of process.
Mary Boblet requested to speak prior to your polling the board.
All right, but we do want to take some action here, so if we could...
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to respond to Russ's question. Some of these projects, you were talking about 6 months, 960 hours and such. Some of these projects are seasonal, and they're up in the snow. So there'll be a flurry of work, and then the snow will come, and we'll do nothing on these projects. And then when the spring comes, then we'll start up again. And no one's done the analysis, folks, on the cost of the work that needs to be done at the county level to support this.
Well, that's precisely what we need the 3 weeks for, and that was part of Shirley's proposal. And what we anticipate is that your commission will be assisting in analyzing the seasonal level of requirements, administrative support necessary to complete the Prop 40 task before us.
Thank you.
That may be partly from what you're dealing with, but also considerably what Shirley and others, and formerly Mike, were working with. So we need to combine those things for a report back to the board in 3 weeks. Is there anything further that anybody wishes to say before I pull the board on that topic? All right. Supervisor Thomas?
No, I'll just make comments later.
All right. Polling the board, first with Russ.
What's the question you're
The question is whether to accept Shirley's recommendation and 3-week timetable for coming back to the board with a proposal to create both for funding and the job task, length of that task, the level of expertise required to perform that task, and the funding sources that could be used toward the hiring necessary to complete the administrative work for Prop 40. Is that a fair summation?
Sure. You also kind of do have a separate polling then on the 10% administrative fee?
No, we're asking them to come back with recommendations rather than make a predetermined thing without any of the information necessary to inform us on that.
Okay, that's included in this.
Yes, it could be up to 10%.
It could be up to 10%. It could be sources that we're not even aware of, but that's for the magic of Shirley's office to perform.
May I make just one comment? I'm with Marita in the sense that I think we need to have a default position if some of these aren't carried through. I know, like the Bret Hart sports complex. I don't know if Calaveras High School has some equivalency, but I think we should be very clear what our default position is and at what point we're going to go to our default position so we don't lose money. So I think we need to be very clear on that.
So you're asking me to come with
the money when we have.
So it's part of the time.
You want that to be in the recommendation, Don?
Okay. I think maybe that then should
give us drop dead dates for a variety of possible transactions.
Right. And what the default positions will be so that we don't lose money.
All right. That's a good addition to that. Any objections on the part of the board? All right. So I will now poll with the addition of Tom's additional content on the question I had outlined previously. Russ?
I'm in favor.
Marita?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And yes, that's 5-0 for that. I would also think that the sorting that we're being asked for here might best take place with the administrative personnel in place, that it makes sense to do that. And we have one other question that came before us in this study session, which was the constitution of the commission itself, the Parks and Rec Commission. The commission brought to us a recommendation to reduce from 7 to 5, and that is, I believe, properly before us to discuss. Do you have anything to say on that and the reasons? Well, you did outline the reasons in your memo, but does anybody else wish to speak to that before we discuss it on the board?
I've outlined everything clearly in the memo. Our commission approved the recommendation to reduce the commissioners on the Parks and Recreation Commission to 5, each being a appointed commissioner from each supervisorial district. The commissioner assignments from the non-Calaveras County government districts would be eliminated, those being a representative from CCWD and a representative from San Andreas Recreation and Parks District. The commission feels it would be that the mission of our commission is to be directly accountable to the Board of Supervisors. There's potential conflicts of interest, long term, and the effectiveness of our commission at some point could be diminished with the inclusion of those commissioners. In addition, the last at least 5 meetings, we had potential issues with making a quorum because of the absence of representation from the CCWD and the San Andreas Recreation and Parks District commissioners. So it also speaks to just our ability to do business. If we have 7 official members and only 5 are regularly showing up, practically speaking, it makes sense to simply reduce the commissioners to to 5.
Okay.
Didn't establishing the commission dealt with if people were not showing up, that we could remove them from the commission? I'm trying to remember that.
There was discussion, but never action.
The guidelines, as I read them, is that you could remove those individuals, and they would be, but not their organization's position. What we're requesting here is a restructuring and the elimination of the non-Calaveras County government districts from our commission. We want to strictly be a county commission.
Yeah, we can't take action on this in the study session, but I'm interested in the board's thoughts on that proposal.
I agree. I'm sorry.
Supervisor Thomas, then Claudino.
I'm very much in favor of taking the recommendations of the commission on downsizing. However, I can see the feet of Director Dean back there. Director Dean, do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, but I haven't really thought about it. First of all, I wasn't even aware that our representative wasn't attending the meeting. And despite some issues that are floating around right now, the CCWD has a tremendous amount that can contribute to the Parks and Recreation Committee and to the Parks and Recreation in Calaveras County as a whole. And if we were eliminated from a seat on the commission without an opportunity to give any input, I would think that would be a bunch of hamstrings. It would be an advantage from their perspective. As maybe perhaps a non-voting member, I still think the CCWD would have something that they can contribute. But I think the most important part of this process is the facilitation of communication, which I don't think is taking place. Because I really wasn't aware of the fact. I'd heard that our representative had not attended a couple of meetings. I hadn't been aware of the fact that this has been an ongoing, consistent kind of pattern. And had I known about that, I would have asked for another representative. I can understand their concerns about the forum. And I've been to enough meetings to know where people who don't attend really do affect how people do business. But I think as a non-voting member, I still think we'd have something to contribute.
Well, let me ask both the CCWD representative and our commissioners, and without limiting it to the two agencies that are currently represented in addition to county-appointed personnel on this commission, if we were to set an ex officio status for existing park and rec participants, so you've got the veterans districts, you've got the Friends of Moke Hill, you have the community clubs that are involved, as well as a number of agencies that may have lands that are being used or may yet be used, including school districts and CCWD. If you created a specific ex officio member for participation as needed, without relying on it for a quorum, would that be something acceptable to all parties?
Not to me.
But not to some board
I mean,
members.
you're either a voting member or you're not.
We've just heard for the past 30 minutes that we're under the gun for time here. And so without prejudice to either of the CCWD or the San Andreas Parks and Rec, I'm fully in favor of the recommendation from this commission. They really do need to, they know what they need to do. And at this point, to coin an old phrase, the lean and mean is the only efficient way to get to our goal of June 30th, 2010. These meetings are public meetings, and I'm sure that these agencies, as well as any other agency in attendance, will be allowed to have their input, their ideas put forth, etc. We have, what is it, Mason, 21 months and some change out here to get this accomplished, and we're right now just trying to get it down to a form where we can move swiftly and efficiently. And so I think that the folks who have been attending these meetings regularly, meaning the commissioners from the 5 districts, pretty much know what they need to move forward as swiftly as possible, and I'm in full recommendation of what they've asked.
All right. Bob, you had a comment?
No, I think not.
All right.
I have comments,
Well,
Steve.
I wanted
Whenever
to
you're
take, I'm actually moving down the line on this one. Any other comments on configuration?
Well, since we can't take an action on this, it'll have to come back and be talked
Yes,
about in an
that's
open
correct.
session. We've begun a renewed process of communication with CCWD on a number of levels here. I wouldn't want to slam the door in their face. I'd like to. Director Dean said he hadn't heard about this. Now that he has, maybe he can check into it, and we'll keep you informed about when it comes back for discussion. You can collect your thoughts and come back at that time to either argue for keeping the permanent seat or just having your representative be a non-voting participant. I'm very much in favor of you being in the room when these decisions are made. So I can understand your frustration, Mason, when the representative isn't in the room and decisions need to be made, but maybe we can fix that.
So,
I don't support changing it.
Bob, I think has a comment. You want to make your comment?
I mean, if they're not
don't
showing,
support changing?
I don't support the recommendation.
Okay.
I support leaving it as it is. In fact, I support making it more inclusive and larger, but without going down that path we just need to stay focused on Prop 40. I just support leaving it as it is. If San Andreas Parks and Rec does not want to be a member anymore, then they can let Bill know, Mason know. We can deal with it. I do not want to reduce it to 5 members.
Okay, Supervisor Tryon.
I would like to drop the San Andreas Park and Rec District, but I am not interested in dropping CCWD. CCWD has the same jurisdiction as the Board of Supervisors, which is the entirety of the county. I think they're an integral player in parks and trails and recreation, given the facilities that they own and possess. They also have considerable financial wherewithal to assist if, in fact, the county needs to do something jointly with them. So I think it's important that CCWD remain a member, but I also think it's important that their member shows up on a consistent basis. So I would like to reduce it to 6 and not have little regional, like San Andreas Park or all the memorial districts or that sort of thing. I think we need to just stay with a county-wide focus. And I think CCWD helps provide that county-wide focus, and I think the county and CCWD should be working cooperatively on Parks and Rec.
All right. And I'll add my comments. This is an interim situation, and theoretically we'll be passing the baton to some entity which will have a clear structure and probably be constructed at least using some of the lessons we've learned from our initial work here. So while I have no great strong feelings one way or the other, I just want a functional body. So my suggestion would be that we not change this, but that we go directly to the 2 agencies and say, are you in or out? And if you're in, would you please make sure that your representative shows up on some regular basis? Anyway, that's my take. I believe there may be another speaker from the audience. Yes, there is.
Hi, Sarah McDaniel. I'm here as a citizen, but Calaveras Unified also. But I have a comment. I'd like to, first of all, I'd really like to applaud the board for appointing this commission and applaud the commission for the work they've done. I've attended many of their meetings, and I know how hard they work and how passionate they are about this whole Park and Rec stuff, and I am too. I just want to make, I've always been concerned about the fact that the San Andreas, and perhaps Bill can speak to this, the San Andreas representative is the District 1 representative, but also the San Andreas Park District representative. It always confused me as to why one person represented both. So if one person is missing, and I understand our director is had to move out of the area temporarily, then you've got 2 votes missing. I don't know if that makes a difference to the commission.
I believe is that accurate, Mason?
Isn't it, Ms. Turner? Who is the San Andreas? I don't think San Andreas Park and Rec has a representative then, because Jan Storm is no longer on the park. Okay. Jan Storm is no longer on the Park and Rec Commission no longer on the San Andreas Park and Rec, and hasn't been for about a year. So I think there's some miscommunication here. And I was told by Vanessa Turner that she represented San Andreas Park and Rec, because I questioned that.
She is my appointee to this.
And she is the District 1 appointee. But she also told me she was appointed to San Andreas Park and Rec and was also representing San Andreas Park and Rec on the commission. So there's a little bit of a problem there, I think. As far as San Andreas, as far as Calaveras Unified, we have many projects that could use extra money if there becomes extra money available. But I had one question. Maybe Supervisor Cladino can answer it, and maybe the Park and Rec Commission, maybe the ones. I understood that San Andreas Elementary also had a playground grant of about $30,000. Was that a previous grant money, or is that part of this?
That's one of the approved. That's an approved.
Because
project.
they didn't mention it on.
It's in the.
Oh, it's in here.
It's on the list of approved projects. Am I correct, Mason?
All I mentioned was the new projects. I didn't go into the previously approved projects.
Right.
Part of the original board.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I just got.
Yeah, it's an approved. It is an
It's
approved
got a little
project.
panicky there for a second.
There are 5 approved projects in District 1. That's one of them.
Well, that'll be a wonderful project, because that playground equipment, I don't know if I should be proud or embarrassed to say I used to play on that when I was a kid. The same stuff is there.
It's resilient.
Anyway, just one last comment. The thought of the Park and Rec Commission being dissolved and going away forever is pretty frightening after all the work that's gone to. I hope it's part of the consideration in the future that we possibly have a Park and Rec director for the county, that all of this work doesn't just go by the wayside. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we were moving to... I think we already have that.
Steve, I still have a comment.
Okay.
In regards to the restructuring. And during the comments, and the focus is on Prop 40 right now. Our commission is doing more than Prop 40. Our commission is writing a recreation master plan. Our commissioners are working on projects within their district to expand recreational opportunities. And as time moves on, we'll potentially bring additional projects and ideas and programs and just more excitement around recreation than what our original assignments were. And we're focused on our original assignments. We're task-driven and goal-oriented. So you're hearing about those things for which you assigned us. Our commission does more than that. We also are extremely welcoming of everybody who shows up at our commission meetings. Every individual, whether they represent a community group or not, is welcome to speak and have input. And any governmental organization, veterans group, parks, enthusiast of any sort are welcome on our commission. The effectiveness of our commission, in my view, is what the restructuring is all about. I included the attendance of these, or the lack of attendance of these 2 positions as an aside. It is my view, certainly, that the Calaveras County Recreation Commission should be a county commission. And like the county, we welcome CCWD. We'd love to have CCWD in our meetings every month. We have a representative from the City of Angels who shows up and has input, who's a non-voting member, and we welcome him. And we want to, when the business that we're discussing involves Angels Camp, we certainly want to have them on the table, and we're going to take their input and attempt to integrate it into what our mission is. And I believe that we are effective enough and have set up a modus operandi which would take any input from CCWD very seriously in the recommendations that we make for you. But indeed, all we're doing is when we pass a motion, we're making a recommendation to you. We're not legally binding. We work at your behest, as you've heard before. So that's the main reason that we need to restructure the commission, so that we can be an effective governing body that works for the county. And I just wanted to share that before you moved on.
Thank you, Mason. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I just
to add?
got a quick question for Mason and ask you to kind of remind me. Does the commission have an adopted set of bylaws?
Yes, I believe they're on your website.
Okay. And
www.no.
And the bylaws, do the bylaws specify, for example, how many meetings, consecutive meetings, a board member may miss, or things like that? So it is kind of self-executing then. If you've got folks who are not making meetings, they automatically drop off. Is that the idea?
I believe it says with the motion of the commission. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it does.
And but again, that wasn't the point of the motion that was made. That has to do with the individuals, not the actual positions.
Okay.
All right. Well, now we'll find out what the behest is. And what I'd like to do is poll the board on how you feel about one of two options that are before us. One is to maintain it as it exists, and the other would be to instruct staff to bring back an altered resolution that created the commission. And so I'd like to see where the board's pleasure is on one of those two alternatives. Supervisor Thomas?
I'd like to see staff bring back a recommendation. It very well may be that they'll recommend leaving it alone, but I'd like to see what they bring back.
In, say, 3 weeks, concurrent with the other. Supervisor Callaway.
I'd like to keep it as it is.
Supervisor Claudino.
I remain in support of the recommendation from the commission, so if they can come back in 3 weeks with some idea of the compromise, I mean, that's my stance. I don't even know what.
Supervisor Tryon.
I would like it altered, but I would like CCWD to remain on.
And
I find it potential problems.